possibly better than a Sunday afternoon just hanging out, laying on the couch with your baby boy and your other pups just hanging out with you, relaxing, all wanting to talk true crime, Idaho 4 case. And we got a good topic. It's actually a good topic. And this is Xander, by the way. For anybody who doesn't know, this is Xander. And he approves this topic. It's kind of a widespread topic, and it's important because we know in a quadruple homicide that took the lives of Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee, there has to be a motive. There has to be. No matter who actually committed the crime, there has to be a motive. Now, there are only two routes you could possibly go when it comes to motive. You got the sick minded individuals that just happen to love and enjoy committing crimes like this, taking other people's lives in a gruesome manner, typically called a serial killer. Or two, there has to be a connection that leads to the motive of the crime. Connection. So this is a cool new series I'm doing, and it's going to actually intertwine with a couple of other creators that I'm actually putting the idea out for them to join me within this very series. One of them is Murder Metal Mayhem, Pete Altieri. Great friend, great friend. I love working with the man. Does a great job. If you haven't seen, we've been working on lives, and we're going to be continuing to do that. Great man. I trust him. And I know he'll put out some great ideas in regards to this as well. The other is True Crime Cult. He actually put out a video requesting my information in regards to how could a single individual commit this very crime. And I'm going to include some of those answers into this video. So I'll spin that back to him as well. So this is going to go to Murder Metal Mayhem, True Crime Cult, and I'm bringing all of you in for the full gamut of conversation. So make sure you check out to make sure they do follow-up responses. I'm ARHayes. This is Convict's Thoughts, and we're going to dive into the actual importance of a connection leading to motive that led to the quadruple homicide in the Idaho 4, again taking the lives of Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee. Very important that we always remember them as they were beautiful. Nobody deserves a crime like this to happen. It doesn't matter what you might have dabbled in your lifetime or your past. A crime like this should not happen to anybody. Now, with that being said, I believe the serial killer motive is known enough that we don't need to discuss that. And where we're sitting right now in the Idaho 4 is extremely important because we have a suspect, Brian Kohberger, who has been incarcerated now for over a year and numerous months. We're approaching almost the year and a half mark that he has been sitting in a jail cell with the fingers all pointed at him as a single culprit of this crime. We all have read the documentation through the court and even heard it specified directly in the courtroom by the defense. Now, get that. Remember that. It's the defense that made that statement. No direct connection between the defendant and any of the victims. And that's key because that really zeroes in if you take away the actual connection, does that hurt the possible motive that would be presented by the prosecution in the courtroom? I, in my personal opinion, feel as though if you take away a connection and deem there is none, then yes, that hurts motive. And the reason why I say that, for a single individual like this to commit this crime, there had to have been a reason. Now, whether that individual is an aspiring serial killer with the motive of growing, with the interest in satisfying the urges within to commit crimes like this, it could be a passion based, emotional, fulfilled crime, meaning one of them possibly turned him down on a date or hurt his feelings in some manner. It could even be more so, just a random weird dispute that turned up into a unfortunate event like this. But none of those make sense at the end of the day, and I'll tell you why. This individual, Brian Koberger, moved from Pennsylvania to the area and literally only lived there a handful of months to build some sort of animosity towards someone or to build even the slightest of relationships. You have to really engage with each other in some manner, hanging out, going to parties, going to the movies, eating lunch, talking on the phone, text messaging. There has to be something at the end of the day that builds some formulation of a relationship that could lead towards motive, because somewhere within that relationship, something transpires that builds someone's want or urges or actual emotional chaos within that could lead them to committing this crime. Very short period of time. What could they have possibly have engaged in that very short period of time outside of maybe a party? People have said the pool party. Maybe they met there. But what would have enraged Brian Koberger so much at a singular pool party that could have led to this? Could Koberger have maybe mingled or interacted at the fraternity house at random parties to where these individuals would attend? That's possible. But what would have led to the anger or the chaos that led to a crime like this? What could they have 20, 21-year-old individuals interacting? You got to remember the age difference. 28 years old, PhD student, compared to just normal college kids working towards graduation. Much difference in age, experience, and most likely interests in life. It just doesn't seem like a connection, because why would Brian Koberger have been a direct part of the fraternity? But then you also have to really look at the past. Even before the arrest was made, you have numerous posts on social media platforms that fully describe a lot of intertwining details of people involved in the fraternity, people involved in and around the victims' homes, even the victims themselves. So, how would Brian Koberger, if it's true to where many people have said that he was that online guy doing all of this talking in the platforms, even to the end of the day, telling on himself that he lived in the Pocono Mountains, where would he have gotten that info? Is this a direct connection maybe to an informant that knew of that connection, of how all that worked, and that's who spoke to law enforcement and gave up Brian Koberger's name? But wouldn't that mean if there was that wild connection that possibly some of the people that I, in my mind, have pointed out numerous times, I felt like they were too close to this situation to not have some sort of knowledge or even involvement? Wouldn't that mean that they would be more important to this case? It just seems like they haven't been important at all because they lawyered up right away and most likely have avoided any interaction with law enforcement. Was Brian Koberger friends with people at WSU that were taking classes that he was a teacher aide of that knew of the victims at 1122 King Road? But that still doesn't make sense because then when Brian Koberger, how would he have built the connection to the victims himself to have wanted to commit this crime? And you have to remember, for him to even get into stalking and hunting mode, he would have had to have had a connection and interaction with these ladies to have built the interest to even do that. I know people would say, oh, he saw a hot girl walk by him, so he started. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, he could have done that with any female at Washington State University or any female at Idaho or any female at the grocery store, for Pete's sakes. Why would it have been someone directly connected to 1122 King Road and these victims? There's no answer to that as of yet, and it's been thrown out in court. There's no answer to it, period. But I do want to intertwine something else in regards to not only there being a connection issue, because I get it. Everybody says, oh, he stalked them on Instagram and he followed them and liked their pic. He would have had to have gotten to know who they were to be able to do that. Where is that connection? The only answer to that could come out in anybody's rightful mind would be the informant gave up the info on that connection. But why would the defense team say there isn't any? Because they would have known about that from the beginning. That would have been what helped lead law enforcement to their client. They would have known that. There would have never been a statement by the defense that they didn't know how they ended up even pursuing Brian Koberger as a suspect, much less furthering that statement within the documents to the court, directly stating there was no connection between their client, Brian Koberger, and the victims. So, without a connection, you struggle with a motive. And that's going to be key in the trial. I'm telling you, when this goes to trial, the big slap in the face moment for everybody is going to be the building and the discussion of a motive. That's going to give up a lot of why Brian Koberger did what he did to these four individuals, if Brian Koberger was the one that did it. Now, I'm not stating he is. I'm not saying he's guilty. I'm not saying he's innocent. What I'm saying is when we get to court and trial, because right now he's the only one heading towards that trial, that declaration of motive is going to be key. A single perp crime. And True Crime Cult reached out to me and says, how does a single individual commit this very type of crime in the time frame that was given? Now, this is going to be something that leads back and ties back to possible one, connection, and even could lead to some sort of motive. If Brian Koberger was the single individual that committed this. And I said, if they're going to need to prove how this individual knew to leave his house at the time he did, and then they're going to need to prove in the entire time he was circling and driving and doing what he was doing, how would he know exactly when to enter the home that they had all gone to sleep? Because remember, if we're truly believing that, because that's what was told to us very early on, they were all asleep, they were in their beds. Well, then why was Xana still getting up to get her food? Which is still in question if that's even a valid thing or not. We know there was a delivery, but we just don't know if it was actually hers. I tend to think if all of this played out just right for someone to be able to enter the home when everybody had stopped making their phone calls, the dog just happened to be locked in a certain room, everybody had ventured into their rooms to go to bed, it was finally peacefully quiet, when somebody had just, gone down, got DoorDash moments before the attack, and somebody was literally still playing on their phone on social media platform, TikTok or whatever it might be, during the time of the crime. And another young lady was awake enough that she came to her doorway 3 times and even watched the intruder leave out the back door. Who, with all everything going on through the night, who let this person know what time who got home, what time everybody ventured to their bedrooms, and what time did everything in the house seem to go quiet enough that the intruder could then park their car and enter the home to commit the crime? Don't get me wrong, a single person could potentially stab someone enough times to take their life with ease. Could they even do multiple stabbings? Yes, it's being proven that can be done. Does that mean it's silent? Absolutely not. Does that mean that it's not evidence everywhere at the end of the crime? Absolutely not. So I'm not saying that a single individual could perfectly pull this crime off without leaving evidence, noise, you know, surviving witnesses all over the place. But the tie to the connection comes to who tipped this person off of the right time. Did this person, when they tipped him off, give how many people were in the home? Who was in the home? Where in the home they were? There's a lot that goes into that concept. And in my opinion, and this is just me saying this, I feel as though the defense strategically was looking to interview Bethany Funk for a reason. They say exculpatory evidence. I say that's the connection. And when I say that's the connection, what I mean is in some way, Bethany Funk and Brian Koberger have some sort of knowledge of each other, maybe even a communicative relationship. I mean, Bethany Funk did flee the state and leave public view altogether and does not want to be a part of anything that this trial offers or brings. She did not want to even be interviewed or talked to prior to the preliminary hearing. There's a reason for that. There is a reason for that. I don't believe it's exculpatory evidence. I believe Koberger is trying to build a connection that he just possibly knows of Bethany Funk? Could it be the family of Brian Koberger that lives in Nevada happens to have interactions with Bethany Funk's family in Nevada? Who knows? But it's a possibility. Outside of that, what else could be a connection to the victims of the home in Brian Koberger? What about Emma? Emma Bailey seemed to frequent that house quite a bit, correct? Didn't Emma Bailey, when she got arrested for DUI and was being driven home, typically they drive you home, but instead of driving her home, they took her to the same apartment complex Brent Kopaka lived in. She did also sign his book at his funeral. So they evidently knew something about each other. Kopaka and Emma somehow, in my opinion, knew of each other. Now, Emma frequented the home. She was good friends with people within the home. Kopaka's from Pennsylvania. So is Koberger. Kopaka just happens to have family that lives in Coeur d'Alene that's actually close to Kaylee's family. Could there be a connection that ties Brian Koberger to Brent Kopaka? And I'm not saying Kopaka committed the crime. I'm just saying a connection there through Emma, who has a connection to the house, and now this big circling connection begins to form itself. Would Brent Kopaka have the capability to be on a computer and actually make statements about the defendant living in the Poconos? Meaning pointing the finger at Brian Koberger? It's a good question. But could Brent Kopaka also have given up a lot of information in regards to the frat house, the view from the frat house of the victim's home, the interactions of everybody and all the drama? Could that have all come based off of information that Emma was providing to Kopaka, and Kopaka was actually putting out via the public forum on social media? I don't know. It's just thoughts that I have. And I am very interested in hearing, because I believe, like Robert said, how could one person literally have pulled all of this off? Well, it could happen if there's a lot of other people intertwined. If you're getting tips and you're getting a lot of help, it could happen. So at the end of the day, I'm very interested in hearing True Crime Cold. What do you feel about that? The connection that leads to the motive that actually better describes why and how this crime happened. And of course, Pete, I would love you just to follow up with me too, because I really trust in your thoughts and I really engage back and forth with you. And I wonder just how you feel. What's your thoughts on connections that lead to a motive? I'm ARHayes. Just Convict's Thoughts. Another great Sunday talk. I think I might take a nap with the dogs and get out another video soon. Have a great night. Good to see you all.